Larry Bird is an NBA legend, but there is a chapter in his basketball story that is often overlooked: his tenure in the front office. You've surely seen highlight reels of his 3 MVPs, his clutch shooting with the Celtics, and that fierce stare, but what about unpacking the less visible yet deeply insightful story of how and why Larry Bird left front office roles not once, but twice? First with the Celtics, then with the Pacers. This is not trivial. It's a lens into organizational culture, leadership timing, and the humility and clarity it takes even for a legend to know when it's time to step aside. There are certain narratives, frustrations, truths that Larry Bird set straight, and there are broader lessons for anyone curious on how front office basketball truly works.
Bird leads to the 3. In your face, he gives Bannister 5.
There will never, ever be another Larry Bird.
Let's start with the Pacers. In 2017, Larry Bird stepped down as president of basketball operations. It seemed abrupt, and many whispered about frustration with small market limitations. ESPN's Jackie McMullen floated the idea that Bird was frustrated because the team wouldn't spend big money. But Bird pushed back decisively. In 2020, he said, "Nothing could be further from the truth. I left there because it was time for me to move on from the Pacers." He emphasized that he had groomed Kevin Pritchard, saw him as ready to take over, and trust him with everything. Bird made it very clear. This was about timing and succession, not resentment. Bird's impact in Indiana was monumental. From 2003 to 2017, he helped transform the Pacers into a perennial playoff team, reaching the postseason 11 times. Their pinnacle came in the early 2010s. Players like Paul George, Roy Hibbert, David West, Lance Stevenson, and a suffocating defense nearly toppled LeBron's Heat. In 2013-14, Indiana went 56-26, best in the East, and Bird earned NBA Executive of the Year. Still, they kept running into LeBron, once with the Heat, then back with the Cavaliers, pushing them close but never over the hump. For fans, it was a tale of so close yet so far. But Bird, ever disciplined, didn't dwell on ego. He simply stepped aside when he felt the baton could be passed with purpose. That narrative of stepping down on your own terms, trusting the people you've mentored, speaks volumes. But this wasn't the first time Bird stepped away from the front office. Flashback to 1992. Upon retiring from his legendary Celtics career, Bird stayed with the team as a special assistant to CEO David Gavitt. It seemed like a natural continuation of his leadership, yet what followed was a chapter defined by misalignment and disappointment. Bird has been candid about that breakdown. One turning point, he protested against the trade for Sherman Douglas, calling Douglas the most valuable guy on our team, and then management traded him anyway. In Bird's view, that trade symbolized sidelining his judgment. Then came the departure of Gavitt, whom Bird admired. Gavitt's exit marked a philosophical shift that didn't sit well with him. Soon after, he recalled, disagreements with new decision makers grew. ML Carr took over as leading voice. Bird felt excluded. Notably, Carr signed Dominique Wilkins without consulting Bird, further straining trust. Perhaps the most uncomfortable moment came when Bird, tasked with finding Carr's replacement, assumed Carr was in the loop. When Carr discovered otherwise, he confronted Bird and said, "How could you betray me after all we've been through?" That miscommunication hurt. Management simply apologized, but the damage was already done. Eventually, by 1997, Bird had seen enough. He quietly resigned from the Celtics front office. He famously said, "I have never looked back," noting that the organization was now completely different. "There's nothing more for me to do here." Then he moved on to Indiana, where he could lead without being ignored. What do these two exits from two very different franchises teach us? Even legends need alignment. Bird's pull from Boston wasn't fueled by ego, but by misalignment and a lack of respect for his vision. In Indiana, he thrived because he shaped the culture. When the culture is shifted or when he felt he'd done his job, it was time to go. Bird stepping aside in Indiana wasn't a retreat, it was an act of leadership. He prepared Kevin Pritchard, trusted him, and gracefully exited. That's rare, and that humility is essential, recognizing you're ready to leave and enabling continuity. Being a great player doesn't guarantee success in a front office. It requires political acumen, diplomacy, and patience. Bird's Celtics experience illustrates this. Navigating interpersonal dynamics, organizational shifts, miscommunications can evaporate trust, even with years of legacy. Bird's journey reinforces that the game and the organization are bigger than any individual, even him. His acknowledgement of that truth and his ability to exit when appropriate underscores a deeper respect for the game's processes over personal identity. For all of the frustration, Bird's front office brilliance remains undeniable and undeniably needed in NBA leadership. He's one of the only people in league history to win MVP, Coach of the Year, and Executive of the Year, a trifecta that speaks to his deep, strategic basketball mind. Under Bird, the Pacers built consistently solid, competitive teams in a tough era, leaning on development, defense, and smart drafting, not big market spending. Bird also credited previous coaches for shaping Celtics legends like himself into successful front office minds. That respect for continuity, legacy, and mentorship underscores why Bird and others like Danny Ainge, for example, made natural executive leaders. And yet, success in that domain requires more than insight. It requires organizational trust, alignment with ownership, and a shared vision. So what's the big takeaway? Larry Bird's exits from front office roles remind us that greatness on the court doesn't shield you from boardroom realities. That stepping away isn't always defeat. It can be the final, profound play of leadership. It takes strength to say the timing is right and I trust the person next in line. And yet, it also takes discernment to know when the situation no longer values your unique perspective, no matter how legendary you are. But what do you guys think? Was Bird's departure from the Celtics inevitable, or could things have been managed differently? Does modern basketball undervalue those with Bird's on-court pedigree in front office roles, or are things better balanced today? And how many franchises today, small market or not, know when to let their legends step aside gracefully? Drop your thoughts below, I'd love to hear your insights. If this deep dive gave you a new appreciation for how front offices work, or the humility it takes to know when to step aside, hit that like button and subscribe for more long-form stories like this. Thanks for watching, and remember, the greatest players don't always make the best executives, but when they do and when they know when to go, that's a legacy all in of itself. I'm Damian Peters, this is Basketball Network, and we'll see you in the next one.